Famed novelist Andrei Marx famously once said, "Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides." The underlying thought being that man can never truly tame the desire of being in a constant state of control once in the face of adversity, further implicated by the manifestation of both fear and apprehension. Emotions one might feel once under severe stress and/or trauma, perhaps attributed by a sense of negligence or a lack of conviction, a psychological breakdown of having to face the inner demons that reside in your consciousness, who torment the very concept of reality, challenging your very own identity and the perception of the world around you, essentially destroying the notion of there ever being hope at the end of the tunnel. The sentimental detachment of all emotion, however, can resolve the very concept of pain as a whole, and in doing so, freeing oneself from all their inhibitions. But to do so, one must envelop themselves in secrecy. Put simply, man must put on a mask to render themselves untouchable. You are nothing but a facade, a shell of your former self, hiding in plain sight. The cost of being human is to not be human at all, and in doing so, you no longer have any weaknesses. Nothing to hold you back, nothing other than yourself. And to that, only one man truly stands out. The Peaky Blinders' very own, Thomas Shelby. Tom, like most British men during the aftermath of World War I, shows clear symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise known as shell shock, a psychological disturbance caused to the human psyche due to prolonged exposure to active warfare, further influenced by the distress caused by being in the vicinity of heavy artillery fire, leaving the victim in a state of total disarray, essentially leaving the victim scarred for life, often left phasing in and out of the very moment the event took place, relentlessly making the victim go through the hellish nightmare over and over again, leaving them in a chronic state of fear. After this catastrophic event, Tom evidently was never the same. Like most, he returned home broken, living in constant fear at night, subconsciously harassed by the voices of German infantry, only being able to find some level of comfort through the use of brown opium. By inhaling the substance, it transcends his mind into a dreamlike state, a feeling of euphoria. In this singular moment, he is finally at peace with his mind. But that being said, it does come at a great cost. Recent studies conducted in 2016 found that smoking opium significantly heightens the chance of cardiovascular disease, meaning opium has a direct impact on our blood circulation and oxygen levels, which can then correlate to heart disease, one example of many. Thomas can't live without it. As disheartening as it may seem, it is one of just a few things that are essentially keeping him both alive and sane. Having served his country, he now lacks a level of purpose and is holding on to anything in life that bears any semblance of order of which he used to live by, constantly having to work in order to clear his mind of all the negative thoughts that now trouble him.
Mr. Shelby, you're meant to be resting.
I've learned something, Francis. There's no rest for me in this world. Perhaps in the next.
As a part of himself is still waging war on the battlefield, psychologically fighting a war in his mind that has by now ended. In retrospect, Tom is very much a prisoner to his own mind, and unfortunately, like many prisoners who have completed life sentences and are thrown back into society, they inevitably fail in being able to integrate back into society. Having been institutionalized for years on end, they are no longer accustomed to the idea of freedom. Life is not moving too fast for them to keep up. They are so far gone mentally that the perception of freedom in itself is now unfamiliar. And for that reason alone, a vast majority of reformed inmates decide to take their own lives as a means to end their suffering. And this may very well have been the reality Tom would have to face, if not for his family. The way I see it, the family dynamic single-handedly reinvigorated Thomas Shelby as a man. It is very apparent that when his family is in trouble, he is no longer fearful of anything. You would be hard-pressed to find a single moment in the show where he is not in control of the situation at hand when his family is at stake.
And poor old Arthur Shelby, standing there at the window, is afraid his wife will never return. My spies tell me she's been seen with another man.
Arthur. Est-ce qu'il se resolve?
And bingo.
In essence, he personifies the concept of having to become something you're not, on the basis that the people you love can remain safe because of that very choice. Put it this way, the mentality of his family, be it weak or strong, has a direct correlation to his overall complexity. He has to be strong for their sake, because if not, the balance of power that has been established within the family will otherwise rupture, resulting in their demise. And for that reason alone, there will always have to be a level of equilibrium within the family to enable them to function cohesively and with purpose, which also happens to dictate the fate of Thomas. The idea of destiny is nothing new to storytelling. Greek philosophy in itself was built around stories crafted by men who to this very day cultivate our worldview. A perfect example being Heraclitus, who states character is destiny, implicating the notion that destiny or fate is not a predetermined factor allocated by a preemptive force, but is rather determined by the character himself, dictating their very own future through their actions in life. This is presented in a multitude of stories and in film. Take Simba, for example. After the death of Mufasa, you see him grow and progress as a young lion, but not without hardship. You see him constantly question his own self-belief, seeking to be nurtured by his late father as he doesn't believe in himself, and is lost because of it. And so it is only after Mufasa instills a sense of hope and desire in Simba when we finally see him rise to inherit and reprise the role of the Lion King, finally being able to fulfill his destiny by simply taking action.
Dad? We're pals, right?
Right.
And we'll always be together, right?
Simba, let me tell you something that my father told me. Look at the stars. The great kings of the past look down on us from those stars.
Really?
Yes. So whenever you feel alone, just remember that those kings will always be there to guide you. And so will I.
This very quote differentiates the fundamental understanding between the two characters. Tom is a war hero. He essentially has nothing left to prove. He put his life on the line for both country and king, and is yet forced under extreme conditions to become the head of an organized crime family. You see, unlike Simba, Tom doesn't have a symbiotic form of guidance. He lost both of his parents at a very young age, not really knowing who they were, instinctively destroying an important relationship, which could very well have changed just about everything in his life, and is one of many reasons as to why he now suffers in silence, and in times of struggle resorts to drinking, hoping that his intuition alone will help him succeed in all his endeavors, blindly allowing himself to drown in sadness to lessen the pain of reality. And yet, it is only in the face of love when you finally see the man behind the mask.
Happy or sad?
Sad.
Okay. But I warn you, it'll break your heart.
Already broken.
I, for one, always saw Grace as a metaphor for the now famous saying, distilled for the eradication of seemingly incurable sadness. As within this moment, she is able to find and unlock part of him that has always been kept locked away. It is only through the revelation of love where Thomas finds a moment of joy and happiness, a sensation of which he hasn't felt in a very long time, a feeling of acknowledgement crafted by a moment of pure intimacy. The very act of opening up, evoking no illicit reaction, creates the illusion of self-affirmation, implicating a sense of progression in his psychology. But unfortunately, Thomas will forever be detained in a grey area, unable to comprehend the dichotomy of both power and love, as his life of crime became a subject of disillusion, causing nothing but harm to his relationship with Grace.
And I'm scared, Grace. I'm scared for you. I'm scared for the baby. And this is how I am when I'm scared. It's unfamiliar to you, but not to me. I can fucking be scared and carry on.
And so it became increasingly evident that he would have to make a choice of which he had no control over. In the end, Grace gave Thomas the satisfaction of feeling complete. In that very moment, she was hope, personified. Grace was, and will always be, his cure for sadness. Love, as they say, is composed of a single soul, inhabiting two bodies. When perfectly synchronized, it has the potential to nullify the very existence of pain. You begin to see life as nothing more than just a dream. In essence, a life with no limitations. And that is why I believe Thomas and Grace embody the methodology of the yin and yang so perfectly. Although they have a distinct contrast in ideology, they both manage to find peace within each other. The dynamic they both share through grief and suffering establishes a level of understanding between the two, essentially desensitizing them to the ramifications of pain when together, allowing them to be free from their past, momentarily finding peace within each other. Though it isn't enough to completely transfix his character, it perfectly captures the essence of love, essentially being unquantifiable.
We know each other. We can talk. We're the same.
In the end, Thomas can never truly be set free from his past. Everything in his life happened for a reason, unraveling through decades of hardship to one day forge a man who now seemingly embraces pain as nothing more than just an emotion, a rudimentary feeling which at this point has no lasting effect. Thomas has no boundaries. He has nothing to fear. His pain is self-inflicting. The loss of self-preservation would no longer give you a reason to fear, but fear sequentially humanizes us as entities. But Thomas has surpassed the breaking point of the human mind. He now pushes forward not because he has to, but because he can take it, constantly overcoming everything life has to throw at him, proving that the human spirit has no bounds. It is in fact limitless. There is no aspect of reality beyond the reach of the human mind. Thomas is a testament to that very line of thought. His mind traversed the need for acceptance. The lack of identification made the integration to darkness, well, instinctive. He lost himself in the idea of hope, blinded by love, in the end, becoming a man who he could no longer recognize. Life is a deception that has a potential to create real emotion, a lie that creates a truth. One can say Thomas Shelby's life is a tale of tragedy, but the greatest tragedy of all was making the world believe you existed in the first place.